Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Drooks Milan Unboxing. We've got a big weekend of boxing ahead of us. Don't sleep on the Friday night's card on the Zone, on the streaming service. It's going to be the early hours of Saturday morning South African time, but it's a good card. Murodjon Akhmadaliev defending his unified WBA and IBF super bantamweight titles, and a flyweight WBC title fight between the champion Julio Cesar Martinez from Mexico and the classic rivalry McWilliams Arroyo from Puerto Rico. That flyweight fight is an interesting clash of styles, so don't sleep on the Boxing Friday on the Zone. But that's not what I'm going to talk about here. I'm going to talk about the big one, which is, of course, Terence Bud Crawford, the undefeated 37-0, 28 knockouts. He's in everybody's top 5 pound for pound list, but he is getting his biggest test so far, I think, easily as a welterweight, because he'll be defending his WBO welterweight championship against the former IBF and WBC welterweight champion Shawn Showtime Porter. Now, I know that Terence Crawford has defeated Kell Brook, who in turn took the IBF title quite a while back from Shawn Porter. But, you know, Brook was damaged goods, I feel, after his loss against the 2 losses against Golovkin and the one against Errol Spence, where he broke his orbital bone. So I think the fight with Shawn Porter is the biggest challenge that Terence Crawford has had so far at welterweight. You can argue that Shawn Porter is more accomplished at welterweight than Terence Crawford is. Now, Crawford is in everybody's top 5 pound for pound because of his entire body of work. He was a dominant lightweight champion, took the WBO title from Ricky Burns in Scotland, defended in a good shootout against Yuriorkis Gamboa, also beat Ray Beltran to get the ring belt, moved up to junior welterweight, and basically he cleaned out the 140 pound division, beating Thomas Delorme for the WBO title, the Iceman Victor Postol for the WBC belt, and then unifying all the marbles when he beat WBA and IBF champion Julius Ndongo. So he cleaned up the entire junior welterweight division, won a ring belt there as well. And as a welterweight back in 2018, he dethroned Jeff Horn, the guy who just squeaked home on a close decision with a gutsy effort over an aging Manny Pacquiao. And his welterweight reign has been a bit of a disappointment because he was unable to lure the many big names in the division into the ring with him. Terence Crawford being with Top Rank and all the big names being with Premier Boxing champions. But now finally he's got somebody. There's the argument, who is the best welterweight in the world? Is it Errol Spence Jr., WBC and IBF champion, or is it Terence Crawford? Or you can make an argument maybe for Yordenis Ugas, who just beat Manny Pacquiao and retired him. Now, Shawn Porter only has 3 losses on his record. He's never been stopped. And those 3 losses are razor close decisions that he dropped. He won the IBF title from Devin Alexander, a tricky southpaw, devastated Paulie Malignaggi in a title defense, dropped it on a close decision to Kell Brook. And then he got another shot for the WBA champion Keith Thurman, dropped a razor close decision there as well. You know, gave Thurman all he could handle. Picked up the vacant WBC belt against Danny Garcia, and then he lost it against IBF champion Errol Spence Jr. And against Spence Jr., it was another very close affair. He lost a split decision, and I think it's a knockdown that Spence Jr. scored there in the death knells of a fight, but basically helped Errol Spence to make that victory clear against Shawn Porter. Having said that, it was far from a walkover. It was another close decision. So I'm excited to see this fight because I want to see what Terence Bud Crawford can do against Shawn Porter. Can he do better than Kell Brook, Keith Thurman, or Errol Spence Jr. did? If Terence Crawford is riding an 8-fight knockout streak, he stops everybody. Maybe not in the early rounds, it takes him a bit of time. He's a slow starter. He might drop around here and there until he figures his opponent out. And then once he hurts his opponent, it's goodbye. Unfortunately, the biggest names he could draw into the ring with him were Amir Khan and Kell Brook, and those 2 were considered damaged goods. I've said what the issue was about Brook and Khan. I think he was never quite the same after getting bombed out by Canelo Alvarez. I think it was a very gutsy move by Khan, but I don't think it was good for his career, unless you just look at it from a money perspective. So I think Shawn Porter has a potential to push Bud Crawford further than he's ever been pushed. Now, Terence Crawford is an awkward customer. He can fight both orthodox and southpaw. Sometimes he starts as an orthodox fighter and he switches to southpaw. I won't say he's a switch hitter because usually he starts the fight, the round in one stance or another stance, a little bit like Marvin Hagler. And he's a good boxer puncher. He's a cerebral assassin. He waits till he hurts you and then he takes you out. He can do a bit of everything. I think if there's a weakness, it's the fact that he takes a few rounds to get warmed up and get into it. And now and then he'll take a shot or two, but I think it's also because he's not been challenged at welterweight so far. And Shawn Porter, on the other hand, he is a hustle, bustle, swarming, rough and tumble pressure fighter. He comes at you and he's throwing punches all the time. He's got decent power also, and he's very awkward. He's got a sort of a herky-jerky rhythm. He gets under a lot of the punches. But if I would have to say what Porter's weakness is, sometimes he leaves himself open, and as he charges in, his center of gravity goes over his front foot. His weight goes too far forward, and then you can clip him. So we've seen among the many good names that Shawn Porter has beaten is Adrian Broner, and he won that Adrian Broner fight hands down, but Broner managed to nail him, I think, in the last round and score a flash knockdown. So did Errol Spence. Nailed him, scored a knockdown that tipped the fight in his favor. But Porter has got a great chin. The reason why he gets caught and why he gets dropped is because, I think of what I've mentioned, he leaves himself open when he's throwing, because he throws so many punches and his weight goes a little too far forward, a little too much over his front foot. But he gets knocked down and he gets up again, like the song says. He's got an iron chin. It's because of that, I think, that he gets caught and he'll take a flash knockdown. But those two knockdowns, he just popped straight back up. So he's got a terrific chin. Now, I would be very, very surprised. Let's just say surprised. Very surprised is maybe a strong way of saying it. But I'd be surprised if Terence Crawford can manage to stop Shawn Porter. And if he manages to make that statement, stop Shawn Porter, do something that nobody else could do, you could make an argument that maybe he should be the top welterweight and not Errol Spence Jr., who's once again injured and hanging in limbo. So for that reason, this fight is very interesting. Porter can also box. He can box a bit out of a back foot. He has a very good jab that he can use. But let's face it, he's not going to outbox Terence Crawford. That's not his fight. He's going to have to swarm him and not give him the space and the time to react and get his shots off. So there's only one way for me that Shawn Porter can win this fight. Is the way he's at his best, and that's swarming all over a guy, going to the head and the body, and not giving Terence Crawford breathing space. You have to be a little bit more careful, because Terence Crawford, I think, is one of the best finishers in the game. If he does manage to hurt Shawn Porter, he could be on him and have him in trouble. But I think Porter might tighten things up a little bit for this one. For his part, Terence Crawford's got to watch the slow start, because you don't want Shawn Porter to build this momentum and then you have to come back and fight at a deficit. What do I think is going to happen? Interestingly enough, a big poll there on the Ring Magazine's blog, theringtv.com. There's a lot of experts being polled there. It's 20-something to zip. Nobody is picking Shawn Porter to win. Porter is a live dog. There is that years of inactivity, a year of inactivity on each side that comes into the equation. It would be foolish to write off Shawn Porter. Terence Crawford did not fight the guys that Shawn Porter fought as a welterweight. His body of work is better, but not as a welterweight necessarily. So we'll have to see what he does. I wonder if Shawn Porter's power can trouble Terence Crawford. I'm not so sure, but I do think his activity is in your face, and maybe his physical strength could trouble Terence Crawford, because Shawn Porter, he is the shorter man. Terence Crawford's got a substantial reach advantage, which he normally does have, 74-inch wingspan. But I think if Porter is close, I think he's physically the stronger guy. He started his career at a higher weight and he came down, whereas Crawford came up through a weight. So I think when it's a wrestling match, a rough and tumble thing on the inside, I think Shawn Porter has the ability to bully him. Terence Crawford is going to have to time him. He's going to have to find that shot, the shot that Errol Spence found, the shot that Adrian Broner found, put him down and then take him out. Barring that, use his reach advantage and just win enough rounds and get by the way that Keith Furman did, the way that Kell Brook did, and the way that Errol Spence Jr. did. And that will depend a lot whether he can get his jab working and be effective from a distance, and whether he can make a dent on Shawn Porter's chin, which I believe he can. I just think Shawn Porter is a rugged, strong guy. I don't think that Terence Crawford is going to take him out in that way. I think this is the KO streak will end, and I think Shawn Porter is going to win some rounds, especially early on. I expect Shawn Porter maybe to sweep the first 3-4 rounds, but as the fight goes on, I think Terence Crawford will figure him out. And if Furman, Brook, at his peak, Kell Brook at that time, and Spence could figure a way through, I think Terence Crawford is every bit as good, if not better than them. He'll figure a way to get past Shawn Porter as well. But I think it will be another typical Shawn Porter good loss that keeps him among the top. It'll be close, but I think I can only see Terence Crawford winning this thing. I can't see Shawn Porter bullying him to that extent and score a stoppage, because I think that's what he'll have to do. I have to grind by down to a stoppage. And I just can't see it. Crawford is that good, and I think he'll be better because he'll be dialed in, because he knows he's got a threat in front of him. He's not fighting Kavaliauka here or Pretol, Amir Khan and Kell Brook. He's going to have to be on his P's and Q's, and he's a kind of professional that will know that. So I expect the very best Terence Crawford to show up, as well as the very best Shawn Porter, and I think that version of Crawford is just that little bit is just better than Shawn Porter. He can do more things in that ring. So I'm going for Terence Crawford to win a hard-fought decision on Saturday night, and then hopefully Errol Spence Jr. can recover soon, and we can finally have, please boxing gods, Terence Crawford against Errol Spence Jr. to finally settle who is the best welterweight in the world. So that's it from me. Please give the channel a like and a subscribe, and until we see each other again, remember to keep those hands up.